Well, you can see where that song came from. I actually asked them to sing that song because I just knew they would just do it so beautifully. And it's such an important message about lifting our sights, lifting our eyes, because our eyes can fall upon life as it's appearing. And if it isn't going the way we'd like it to go, then it's easy for us to be drawn down into a sense of disappointment, sadness, depression, thinking that something has gone wrong, that there's been a cosmic mistake, and somehow this washed up on our beach and it should have been somebody else's fate. And why is this happening to me? And I don't know, I'm probably just talking to myself here, but but if it has applications elsewhere, then it's so much the better. But I think that you know, we live as human beings in large part, actually in all part, but it's not all of what we are. And the sort of the bane of the human existence, you might say, is, or at least in our spiritual intentionality, is that time and space seem to get in the way of our deepest spiritual intentions. And what I mean by that is that time and space separates us from a future, maybe a preferred reality. And that when we're talking about spiritual matters, time and space don't exist. And so when we're trying to understand this beautiful notion that you and I already live and breathe and have our being in God or in spirit, that doesn't reconcile with our ordinary perception, you know, which sees the promised land of possibility as being something other than what I'm living right here and now. Yes, we anticipate how life could be better. We anticipate, you know, the landscape could be changed in a way. The grass could certainly be greener, and there could be more flowers, or people could be nicer to us. We could have more opportunities in life. You know, we can make our own list of how we would like to create the world, our world, in our image and likeness. Yes. And there's nothing really wrong with that at one level. And at one level, it's sort of the way that we live our lives. We set goals, and goals are worthwhile, and they absolutely are helpful to us, sort of using all of our capacity for creativity and to improve the life at the level of this human experience. But you and I are in a room like this today because we're wanting something more than that, aren't we? We're really wanting some sense that life can be okay even with circumstances just as they are. And that then becomes the real opportunity for us to deepen our understanding, to really deepen our understanding of what is it really like to live a life that is fulfilled, not because of what my eyes are falling upon, are pleasing to me, or because she loves me, or he is, you know, the one that I want, or I have a certain level of financial security. But how could it be that I could actually experience a sense of well-being even with life as it is? And this requires spiritual vision. Spiritual vision. And unlike the kind of vision that you might improve with your eyesight, it doesn't require you putting on a pair of glasses. But it does, in some sense, require that you change the focus of your seeing. In fact, it really has nothing to do with your physical sight. Because if it only had something to do with your physical sight, then those who are not sighted physically would have no opportunity to experience this beautiful vision of love and life and peace amidst all conditions. You know, Jesus talked about this man who had been born blind, and his disciples were really curious about why this man was born blind. You know, there's that part of us that really wants some explanation for why life has turned up the way it has. Do we know this? The curious mind, the inquiring mind wants to know why. Why did this happen? Because in some sense, we're looking for some sense of fairness according to the lens of our own human understanding, which believes that if you're a good person, you shouldn't have any bad things happen to you, right? And do we know that that is how it plays out in the world? No. So maybe that's something we have to let go of. And we have to understand, as Jesus said to the disciples, this man was born blind so that God's glory could be manifested through him. In other words, this man was born blind, and the very purpose for his blindness was that in this particular lifetime, this man would find out that the true presence and the power and the love of God have nothing whatsoever to do with the physicality, with his physical gifts, with his ability to see. And this is so instructive for us because those of you who have been meditating for a long time know that most of your insights have come to you when you have closed your eyes, when you have looked inward, when you have accessed that part of your being that is not your physical self. And so we are here in a spiritual community to see if we can adjust our vision, to see differently. When I was, I think probably in junior high or somewhere in there, and we're living in Illinois, which did not have any mountains, the very exciting vacation plans one summer was to go to Colorado and visit the Rockies. And never having seen a mountain before, I was very excited. My sister and I and my parents were driving, and as we were getting closer, we could make out what do you call it? The silhouette, yeah. The outline of the mountains when we were still, hundreds of miles away. And I said, gosh, they look so small. And I said, well, it's just because, the perspective from how far away you are. They said, they're actually very tall. They're 12,000, 13,000 feet, whatever. So then as we got closer, and we could really see, the mountains. And then this very strange thing happened as we were actually in Colorado, and we were sort of driving, and I'm saying, when will we be in the mountains? Because what was happening is we were ascending, and we no longer could see the mountains from a distance. It is as if the mountains had disappeared. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we were actually at the higher elevation, and we were no longer able to see the mountains, and I complained. I said, where's the mountains? And my father said, we are on the mountain. We are already on the mountain. And I said, but wait a minute, I don't see it. He says, that's because you only see it from a distance, and when you're actually in it, you no longer see it as something that is big outside of yourself. You have actually climbed the mountain already. And this is the way that it is in the spiritual life, is that we are waiting for some sort of perspective, some sort of a vision of a better life, when all the while the spiritual understanding is that you are already in it. You're already living and moving and having your being at this higher elevation, but the awareness is just not there to perceive it. It doesn't mean that you're not there. It only means because you're looking for you have a particular vision of what a great life would be, a loving life would be, or a peaceful life would be. You have this vision for it. It's not matching up. And so you're like, wait a minute, I'm being robbed here. And all the while, the spiritual truth is that you're living in it, and you just don't have eyes to see. That's what, Jesus said. You have eyes, but you do not see. And this idea of spiritual vision is about sort of closing the outer eye to the appearances of life and not judging life by those appearances, but by righteous judgment, as Jesus said, which is to turn within to this kingdom of heaven, which is an inward journey to the realization of who and what we already are. It's already what we are. It's a journey without distance. And if we can realize that our life's purpose is to know this, then what happens in the outer aspect of our life can actually be that which can foster this awakening process for us. Because we no longer look at life as being something that's in the way of our spiritual growth, but we see that how life unfolds for us can actually be the wake-up call. Do we know how this can be? Some of us know this very well. We've done it a few times, we've climbed this mountain before, and we've had our disappointments, and we will have more of them in this life. But I want to say a little something about staying stuck. We've all been, there's nothing wrong with us grieving our losses and having things happen to us that are difficult. It's a very normal human thing. But it's like anything else. It's like we don't want to pitch our tent in our disappointment, right? We want to, if it's a phase that we're going through, you know, I'm disappointed and I'm experiencing that, I'm not going to short circuit this process. I'm going to let it be all that it needs to be. I'm going to feel the feelings of what that's like, because to do an end run around that prematurely would actually cause me to stay stuck in this story much longer than if I feel it and allow it to feel its bottom. And I encourage people to do that. But you know, sometimes you get to the point where you've actually pitched a tent in your grief and your sadness and your disappointment, and you're still railing against life long after perhaps you might have a shift and begin to see it in a new way. So years ago, when I went through a major disappointment, I was stuck, and I was in terminal grieving. It became, what was acute became a chronic condition for me, and I realized I needed to do something. So turning to prayer, turning to God, turning to an answer. And what came to me was an inquiry, an asking of questions about living with disappointment. And this is what came. Living with disappointment is a conflicted household. Like someone is there to remind you that you've lost, that something went wrong and something that's missing. And here's the question: does disappointment speak truthfully? Does it reveal the deepest yearnings unfulfilled, or simply complain over surface disturbances? Does it reveal a foundational loss or a superficial disaster? Does it take inventory of what remains after the storm? Does it present a blueprint for the house that can be built upon the footprint of devastation? Does it envision the life after death? Can it see the invisible desires of the heart and speak them into the winds of change? Can it gather the debris and clear the land for the dwelling which must be built from ground zero? Does it realize that life goes on and never diminished by change or loss or failed plans? Does it connect to hope or faith or illumination or possibility? Does it know of these things? Does it stand up to the test of time? Is its opinion forever justified as changes and rebirths transform the landscape and color the losses and reform the damages? And the answer? No. And so, as much as our sadness and our grief and our disappointment has a place in our process, it becomes an obstacle to what you and I really want, which is to experience the rebirth of life after loss. Yes? We're coming up on Easter. Of course, we know that story is emblematic of this nature of life, which is that something needs to die in order for there to be new life emerging. And that the very notion of death, which repulses some aspect of our humanness, is also embraced by our divinity. Because who and what you really are knows that something that is obstructing and delaying our awakening process needs to die. It needs to go if we are to grow. If we are to grow, something needs to go. And if it didn't need to go, then it would be different. And when we can sort of see life as being that there is a purpose for our life that actually is is a renovation energy. In other words, it's moving through our life, and it's recognizing those stuck places in us and in our life in order for us to get off this belief that life has to do with externals, that the great blessings of life has to do with everything lining up perfectly. Yeah? And like I said, there's nothing wrong with this idea of sort of visualizing our life, and we have this power to do that. And I want to share some thoughts about that with you as I end today, because in unity and in New Thought, we are reminded, particularly in the early stages of metaphysical teachings, about this power to create our own reality. And you've heard these talks over and over again. But what happens for many people is that they, just like getting stuck in any kind of a human emotion or any kind of habit that we can get into, we can get stuck in the idea that our spiritual practice is all about manifesting a better outside life, manifesting externals. And if we get stuck there, then really our ego has just really put on a hamster wheel of continuing to do the same thing over and over again, and we're not going to be getting different results. So there is a maturation process that when we're on the spiritual path, that we move from visualization, which is about imagining or doing or having something and generating the feelings that would accompany that kind of an experience. And visualization involves having an idea of what we want to accomplish and how we want to live our life. And then imaging that goal is already having been established and having the necessary mental and emotional vibrations that would accompany that. And visualization is a really beautiful and a wonderful stage in our spiritual evolution. But it isn't the end game. And many people are waking up to that because they have found that they've been able to manifest things in their life. They've been able to effect change in their life. And yet there's still this sort of nagging sense of discomfort, of discontent. It's like a scratch they can't itch. You know what I'm saying? There's an itch you can't scratch. You can't get one more car or one more whatever it is that you're looking for, and it doesn't quite touch it. You know what I'm saying? So when that becomes symptomatic, then it's evidence unto what might be another sort of awakening process, which is to move from visualization to visioning, or spiritual visioning. In visioning, we align in consciousness with our divine purpose. Our divine purpose, not for the human purpose, but for the divine purpose, which is to love and express in a greater degree in our life. Yes? Who have we come here to be? And then we open ourselves up to a sense of how that expression is supposed to occur through us. Michael Beckwith, Dr. Michael Beckwith, who is very gifted with language, says this: visioning is a process by which we train ourselves to be able to hear, feel, see, and catch God's plan for our life. It's based on the idea that we're not here to tell God what to do or to ask God for things, but to absolutely be available for what God is already doing, to open ourselves up, to catch what's already happening. Can you feel into that? That there is this energy, this love, this life that's pulsing through the universe, and we are part of this universe. And if we can catch what is wanting to take place here, and we can get on that soul train, right, then we can get where we really want to go. Whereas if we listen to get on the ego train, we may have a nicer looking ride or a different kind of person in our life, but will it fulfill us? Yes? No? Are you with me? Yeah, okay, good. All right. So we begin with the premise that what we are seeking in form is already resident within us. This is the key, and we started with this. That what we're looking for is already here. It's not something we have to acquire. It isn't that thing, that person, whatever. It's a spiritual quality that's already here. And we are seeking what we are seeking in form is already here in the unformed qualities of peace, love, order, wholeness. And so we allow the perfection and the wholeness of this one life to manifest in our life. This is the essence of Jesus' teaching when he said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Seek ye first. Not seek ye first the baubles and the accoutrements of life, and then you will enter the kingdom. But seek ye first the kingdom. In other words, seek the recognition of the one presence and the one power that's already doing its perfect work through you, and try to catch its vision. Try to get in league with this intentionality that is love itself. And when we do that, then we know what to do. And we even know what this difficult situation might be for. And we don't see it against us if we are aligned with our purpose. Because if I'm aligned with my divine purpose, and my purpose is to recognize that I am not just this body-mind going through, a roller coaster life experience, but I'm a spiritual being, and I'm seeking to know that depth of my being even more profoundly, moment by moment. And that this circumstance, which seems to be against me, can really do the exfoliation of this false sense of my being. It can actually strip away how I've identified myself up to this point, whether it be a job or a relationship or a certain amount of money. And when I am divested of that superficial identity, then what can shine more brightly is who I am. Yes? Do you know this? You know this. If you've lived a few years, you've had these experiences. Maybe you haven't had the container or the context to hold this understanding so that what looked to be against you can actually be seen as a spiritual advantage. As actually, that you've been blessed by this situation. Wow. You see how my voice went up there? Blessed. Blessed. That's how happy I am. I'm so blessed. And that is why we're here. This is why we're here. There's all kinds of workshops all over the place and books you can read, and there's great psychologists that can tell you how to make your life better, and get rid of him and get her, and do this and do that and get another degree and all that good stuff. But at the end of the life, and I've been with a lot of people at the end of their life, they don't seem to talk too much about those externals. They talk about the regrets that they have more to do with not living their life, not living that authentic life, and being motivated by some sort of false motivation that kept, getting their attention, but it wasn't true. It wasn't building their sense of being. It was only keeping them in a constant state of dissatisfaction and discontent, and not enough. And we can feed that, like the hungry ghost that it is, where it just eats more and more and more and never gets fulfilled. Or we can say, wait a minute, why am I here? What is the purpose? What is my purpose in this life? And when we hold that as being essential and the very standard by which we will establish whether this situation in our life is congruent with that purpose or not, then we will have the metric in order to decide whether this is actually congruent with who we have come here to be. And that, I think, is what many of us are waking up to. That this may not be the first reaction we have when life challenges us, but hopefully somewhere along the continuum of moving through the process of grief and sadness and disappointment, we realize that if we stay in this grief and sadness and disappointment, we will not get the spiritual vision that we really come here for. That at some point we have to lay it down. We just have to let go and then open ourselves up to how could this be for my spiritual growth and unfoldment. And when we do that, the answers come. You will be able to see life in a different way. It will reveal itself to you. You'll be shown how it is actually perfect for who you have come here to be. And when we see that, then we no longer judge life. As Jesus said, do not judge by appearances, but by righteous judgment. And the righteous judgment is knowing that who you and I have come here to be is a greater expression of God, a greater expression of love, of peace, of joy. And there is nothing that can stop us from doing that. In fact, the things that may seem to be against us can be that which can actually open us up to be a greater expression of love. Don't you know how this is true, either in your life or people you know? People who have gone through, life-threatening illnesses become extraordinarily compassionate, yes? People who have lost a child become those who can be with people who have lost children. They suddenly find a new purpose for life, even though something very precious has been taken away from them. God can use everything that happens to us for good. This is the lesson of spiritual vision. Amen? Amen.